Hey everybody, if you're joining us here on the live stream, welcome. It's good to have you if you're on Facebook or YouTube Live. And we are going to answer more of your cycling and triathlon related questions today because this is the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. We're going to be covering a bunch of different details before we get into the questions today, but all good things and some exciting events coming up that we want to share with you guys. So with that, let's kick off the proper podcast. What say you guys?
Let's do it.
Good? Cool.
Wait a second. Okay, I'm ready.
Now you're ready. Okay. Welcome to the podcast. It's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee with our head coach, Chad Timmerman.
Hi, everybody.
Our CEO, Nate Pearson.
Hello.
And we are going to answer more of those cycling and triathlon related questions today. And you can submit them to us at trainerroad.com/podcast. We will read all of the questions that are submitted every week. We'll go through them, and then we put together the best best mashing together of questions that we feel like makes for some interesting and informative discussion for you all. Before we get into that, though, we had a product release this week that was pretty exciting stuff.
Yep, this isn't the one we've been teasing, but now when you finish a ride and when it goes to Strava, the image of the ride will be uploaded. So
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's nice. The thing that's cool about it is when you're doing an interval and you know that people are going to see it afterwards, you're much less likely to bail early.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
And you get to see it compared to what you're supposed to do, right? Whereas before, like, you might be able to drill into the ride and actually see what they did and look at their power graph. Now it's front and center.
Yep.
So we all it's not just us three that have to watch our P's and Q's now.
Yeah.
So. The next thing I wanted to say is that the podcast is now on Spotify as well. So you can look that up on Spotify and listen after the fact. It's not live on Spotify, but you can listen after the fact. You can share them. You can follow us there, and then you'll get notified every time. It just kind of sets up right there so that it's in your feed in Spotify, which is pretty handy to have. So if you don't like using podcast apps, you could always use Spotify as well.
How do you find it on Spotify?
If you just look for Ask a Cycling Coach, or if you look for TrainerRoad, you'll be able to find both of them that way.
Cool.
So, or you'll be able to find it either way. The next thing to cover is there's a big bike race that's happening actually really soon. Not a whole lot of announcement to it, or lead up, I should say. But Peter Sagan has a Gran Fondo series he's doing in California, in Northern California and Southern California. And the northern one is going to be dirt. Southern's going to be road. And it's May 3rd through 5th here in Truckee. So it's about a half hour away from where
backyard.
we are.
Yep. We race on those roads, actually.
We do, yeah. And like our weekly race, it's going to be a ton of fun. So it's a mix of road and gravel. A friend of mine who is Kurt Gensheimer, he's the Angry Single Speeder. He helped lay out the course, and that guy knows these roads like the back of his hand.
60 miles, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Isn't there a 30-something mile choice too?
Yeah, there's a option that you can do that's going to be, I guess, not only that. I think that, there's a 30, and then I think a 60. So it's going to be a ton of fun. Goes by a waterfall. Cool
Today's
stuff.
the 15th of February, 2018. You can sign up today. Registration opens like 10 a.m. We're all going to do it. Actually, a whole bunch of TrainerRoad people are going to do it.
I think like 8 or 9 of us. So,
yeah, it's exciting. It'll be super fun. So hopefully more people come if you guys want to.
Yeah, you can check it out. Go to saganfondo.com, and then you can get the information on it. And if you are planning on racing that, let us know. It should be a ton of fun. It's going to be it's in a region that's darn near deserted, and it's just like raw La Sierra type of terrain. It's awesome. So going to be a ton of fun. If you're going, let us know, and it'll be fun to see y'all there. So beyond that, though, or actually much closer, we're going to team camps.
Oh yeah,
this weekend. You and I, Nate.
I'm a little nervous. Like we're going to pro team camps.
We are, yeah. So we're going to the Cliff Bar team camp. We're going to the Mark Pro team camp. And they're both really close. They're like an hour away from each other on the same weekend. So we're going to kind of pinball ourselves back and forth.
We're doing like the hard day of one camp and then the hard day of another camp. Or something.
Yeah, back to back. Yeah.
Good luck.
It's going to be interesting. And we're actually, so this isn't going to be a live podcast, but this one obviously is, but we're going to be recording a podcast there. And it's not going to be live. It's going to be edited and posted up together after the fact. But a lot of these riders are in different positions in terms of like what they are prepping for the year, right? So some of them want to race, kind of like us, right? Some people are raring to race. In fact, some of the Mark Pro guys, right after this camp, they're getting on a plane to the Dominican Republic for a UCI race over there, right? Mark Pro guys, a lot of them are going to be prepping the Cliff Bar guys are going to be prepping for crit racing that's going to be happening a little more into the summer, right? So, but some guys are prepping for early season races. So we're going to be covering all those differences and how they use a team camp, or in other words, for all of us that don't maybe go to team camps, a good block of training, how we use a block of training differently depending on the demands that our race season puts on us and our fitness.
And based on where they're in the season, the Mark Pro camp is more like, let's decide who's like the fastest and more like pecking order.
Yeah.
And the Cliff Bar, hopefully, is more team building rather than let's see who the strongest is and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like we're going to have with the Mark Pro Camp, Phil Mooney, the manager of that team, or the director, which we actually did a podcast with him that I still feel is like one of our best podcasts. It was super informative. It was really awesome.
And he's in the chase.
Yes, he is in the chase. And he's an incredibly fast rider himself. He'll drop plenty of the riders on his team, which is pretty awesome. So
he's got a pretty impressive list of Palmares.
Yeah, he's an awesome rider. So, but we did a podcast with him last year around this time, and we talked all about team camps. He's actually scheduled a 20-minute individual hill climb time trial. And then I think there's going to be another 20-minute hill climb group time trial that we're doing too.
Wow.
So, and then we have, I think it's like a 60-mile ride. So it doesn't sound that long, but it's like over 7,000 feet of
It's
climbing
a hard
60
ride.
miles.
If I'm within 1 minute on some one of those riders in the climb, I'll be so proud of myself.
Exactly, right? Yeah, and they do have some guys that, once again, are not prepping for climbs at all, right? They're just prepping for flat sprints and crits. So we might have a chance. Maybe. Who knows? Never, probably not. But anyways, that's going to be a lot of fun. So stay tuned. We'll be having some Instagram content too from these camps, trying to give you guys some insights into this stuff. And stay tuned for that podcast when it goes up as well.
And then are you going to race the crit Monday?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to race a Cat 5 crit Monday.
Oh, Cat 5 crit are scary
pie.
words right
I know.
there. Scary
I know, I'm a little
pie.
scary.
It's called the Cherry Pie Criterium in Napa. It's like an early season staple in the Northern
43rd
California region. Yeah, it's been
event,
around for a long time. But as Chad said, it's known as Scary Pie.
It's just early season, so a lot of people are shaking off the cobwebs, haven't really settled into they're rekindling their skills.
So a lot of people, that's a good point, is if I wanted to be safer, I should skip early season crits.
Yeah.
Generally, right? That's where the most crashes happen.
Yeah, but you are bringing a lot of fitness into the early season, so it's kind of hard to.
I know, I'm excited, right?
It's kind of hard to pass upon these opportunities. Yeah.
Like you said, I think that two factors go into making early season races potentially dangerous. Like you said, a lot of eager beavers out there, perhaps riding over themselves, not thinking things through quite as well. But they also, a lot of the time, they get out of experience in a group scenario or in a race group scenario. Not just a group scenario, but a race group scenario. And you build this fluidity after even a short period of time, and
even if
it's
just a matter of relaxing, just learning to just the ebb and flow of mass dynamics.
It's like dancing.
Totally.
You dance with somebody else, and at first it's all awkward, then after a little while,
that is a super good metaphor. Yeah.
Thanks, Chad.
Yeah. Is it a simile? Whatever. I don't care.
And also, so before we go, that's going to be this weekend. Going to be tons of fun. Follow us on Instagram. Just go to TrainerRoad and you can see us there. But Nate, you also wanted to clarify something that we talked about last week.
I said before that between the mobile and desktop apps, because we have Mac, PC, Android, and iOS, that our new development work is going into the mobile apps. But I want to clarify something. So the new development work on the mobile apps are going to make it to the desktop apps too. We're waiting for some technical things to come out. But anything that makes you faster, like real faster, is going to make it to all of them.
Yes.
So like this new RAM test we're talking about, that's going to get in all of them. An example is we have a improvement for device help. So when you pair your new devices inside of the mobile app, we have a best practices, and if you can't find something, we have the same list of things you could try that our support staff would say. That's in the mobile app, but not the desktop app. But I feel like it's not hurting your day-to-day training by not doing that. That just helps us reduce support tickets and frustration and onboarding experience with people.
For new users.
Yeah, for new users. So that's also going to come. It's going to come back, and even sometimes. A very common thing that happens is batteries run out, and someone comes up and they're like, I won't pair with TrainerRoad. Yeah. But if you had that list where you could check and you just say, hey, try to replace my battery, and then it works. So even though it's been working flawlessly for 4 months, one day it won't pair. Yeah, I mean, it will definitely happen You always, you guys ever run out of battery before training?
Yeah.
Right.
Toddler unplugs the trainer, happens too. So
Yeah.
like, you know, and you don't know about it.
Never had that happen, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, you get the same benefit in terms of whatever app you're using. If it's a TrainerRoad app, you're going to have the same training benefit. Yep. Yeah. Also, Chad, you've been doing or testing out kind of a different workout structure or strategy, and some people were sending in some questions on it because once again, our Strava rides are heavily critiqued. If we do something different, or if we, heaven forbid, we don't stick to the plan, then we hear about it. But you were doing something kind of interesting.
Yeah, so I'm not exactly testing this out. It's not as though I have to suss this out to see if it actually works. I know it works. I'm doing it more as a matter of I'm getting over an illness. So I got a little bit of stuff in my chest still, and I'm just trying to keep the intervals shorter so that it's a little easier on my body, a little easier on my lungs in particular. But it has brought up questions, why am I segmenting these intervals like that? Instead of doing a 3x15, 3x18, 3x20 sweet spot workout, why am I doing them in 4 and 5 minute increments?
Yeah, so you're doing 4 and 5. Sorry.
And then how long is the break in between them?
Short. I mean, I think I started with minute ones, and I'm down to 30-second ones now.
Gotcha.
But anyway, it keeps you from getting to that point where you're so ramped up that in my case, I start hacking. So respiration comes up, heart rate comes up, but then I take enough of a break that things ramp back down again and I can get back in it. And I'm still getting basically the same bang for the buck. And this is where the questions come in. It's like doing shorter VO2 max intervals where we don't beat ourselves up with long duration and high intensity. We just hit small bits of the high intensity with little breaks in between, but not breaks that really compromise the overall quality of these intervals or the workout. And it's the same thing here. I talked about in one of my replies that there is a decline in aerobic efficiency that we avoid because basically as the interval drags on, the ATP turnover, the oxygen cost of your energy goes up. So inefficiency creeps upward. And adding these little breaks helps us avoid some of that inefficiency. It's not really, maybe not a goal that you should chase in training because you're trying to exact you're trying to push your system, so you don't always want to avoid those inefficiencies. Certainly do want to avoid them during racing, but that's just kind of a happy benefit of this. But basically all I'm doing is redistributing my recovery. Yeah. So over the course of 20 minutes of sweet spot work, normally I'd have a 4 or 5 minute break. I'm still taking that 4 or 5 minute break. I'm just doing it in 30-second or 1 minute increments throughout the interval itself, and then shorter breaks between the big intervals.
Should people ever then do 20-minute, 30-minute sweet spot?
Absolutely. So this is, like I said, it's just a way of kind of, or maybe I didn't mention this yet, it's a way of easing into this. So maybe you don't have the muscle endurance, maybe you don't have the pain tolerance to do long VO2 max work. Maybe you just don't have the fitness to support those longer efforts. So you ease into it. But the fact is, between going from base to build to the specialty plans, as you get closer to the events, the training has to more closely replicate what you're going to do on the race course. Yeah. So in our cases with the 40K time trial, we know we're going to be riding straight for 50 to 60 minutes. If I don't do intervals, I can't
60 minutes.
I can't bank my whole event on 3 and 4 minute repeats because that's not going to happen out on the race course. So if I go out there expecting to excel over something that's that long,
pause the timer, guys. I need to backpedal.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to take a quick break. Everybody, hang on. That's not how it works. So you do have to make those demands more closely replicate what you're planning to do.
So we could also, like, if someone has a big workout like Galena, I think that's 3 times 20. They could then. I think there's Carson and some other like ones that are shorter ones if they're feeling bad that day. So like, hey, I'm not feeling all the way, but I still want to train. That'd be a good like step back.
Yeah. And better yet would be the regressed versions of those or the toned down minus versions of those where I actually have inserted in a lot of cases, taken a 10-minute interval and made it 4 2.5-minute intervals with a 30-second break.
Awesome.
I actually want to get on top of that and make sure that there are more of those so that that's always an option because it's a really good way to maintain basically everything you want out of that workout, but just tone it down. Stress on your body.
So forget what I just said. Do the minus versions because that's why you're building them.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that way, like I said, so right now my next workout will effectively be a 3x20. You know, Nate was doing 3x20s a while ago. If I had tried to do 3 20-minute intervals, the first one probably would have crushed me.
I was doing 3x30s.
Intimidation right there.
There's a lot of, just so everyone knows.
Yes.
Because they might not see all the backstory. Yep. Chad just called me out on Slack internally, me and Jonathan, a couple days ago. So the talk has been ratcheting up here for our upcoming 40K
it's
time
time
trial.
for
Exactly
the
right.
trash talking to start. We're about 3 months out. We got to start getting in each other's heads.
Yeah.
Trying to.
Yeah, that's true. Chad was claiming that his best rides were happening when he didn't have a power meter back in the day, and that's when he had the best power data.
Because
So.
we were looking for his power, like with our go to the Facebook beta group. Go in there if you want access to a new product. But we're looking at your best power PRs, and he said, "Oh, I didn't have a power meter. That's why my best power
That's
wasn't
how
there."
it goes with me all the time.
My results speak for themselves, though. I mean, look at any of those races, and if I happen
story.
to beat some very fast guys who
No,
did have power data, it stands to reason.
Chet, I remember those days, and you just like lapping the field. So I remember.
Absolute beast.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a.
But that was a long time ago, Jonathan.
It was a
He's
lot's happened.
He's a lot older, right?
Old dogs. Yeah.
Chad doesn't even know.
So one thing I wanted to just recap on this is that's a really smart strategy, Chad. If you are finding yourself, like you said, maybe you're sick, or maybe that just something has caused it so that it's particularly difficult to be able to finish those longer intervals. This is a great another strategy that you can do with it. So, Nate, you raced your bike this weekend, and we're going to kind of transition from this into some questions too, because some of them depend from this. But we were talking about this. There are a bunch of valuable takeaways.
Yeah.
You won again, by the way.
I won the sport division,
Yes.
so male 30-39 sport division. But what I want to say here, mountain biking, cross-country mountain biking. What I want to say, it's like a 90-minute race. I hate just hearing someone's race reports, but I love race takeaways. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna kind of talk about what happened, but mostly the race takeaways. Mm-hmm. First thing, my wife did actually like a double duathlon the day before at the same park. And the mistake I made is we were at this park most of the day, then we went shopping afterwards. And I had like this thing of coffee and then didn't drink all day. Oh. And I woke up in the morning dehydrated with a headache. So takeaway, the hydration really starts the day before, doesn't it?
Just prior to your race, you're already dehydrated.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not great.
Yeah, right. And it seems silly, but I just wanted to mention it because a lot of times you travel and there's like, I see people at expos, at marathons and Ironmans and stuff, and they're walking around. Some people, you see them carrying the water and stuff, but other times like 4 hours can go by and you're not drinking anything. Yeah. It's easy to forget.
My rule back in the day, even when racing motocross, was if I was within 48 hours of my race, I always had a bottle of water in my hand. And it wasn't that I was drinking it all the time, constantly chugging bottles, but it was, I just always had one there and made sure that I was just sipping on the bottle when I could.
It was available when you were thirsty.
Exactly right.
Yeah, where in my case, it wasn't. And I was like, you just forget about it a little bit, if it's not there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first takeaway. Second takeaway, it's a 3-lap race. Mm-hmm. On the second lap, I actually thought I was going pretty hard. And then this other guy, Tobias, I looked behind me, and he's right there. And so I started to go a little bit harder, and I put my head down, and I took a little wrong turn. So he got ahead of me. Then we got a little technical climb section. I had to put a foot out, and he did it. But basically, he gapped me by 30 seconds.
Okay.
On the second lap. And I got into this. I was trying to think of, like, when I do cross racing, I get gapped by 30 seconds. Yeah. My brain gives up.
You check out.
Yeah, I check out. I'm like, there he goes. I'm never going to catch him. In this situation, looking at it in hindsight, I thought that I could come back, right? And so I wasn't in that mental state. But it also made me think of like his attack or what an attack is for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think a lot of people misunderstand. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. You have to have I shouldn't say this, actually. You don't have to have the fitness to back up an attack. Mm-hmm.
You could be less fit than the other person.
You can bluff your way through the thing. Yeah. And I think a lot of people look at, to a certain extent. To an extent, yeah. It'll catch up to you eventually. But I think a lot of people think of attacks as just physical. He had more physical ability, energy, strength, whatever else you want to say, than I did. And then in our minds, if we're thinking that way, of course we aren't going to try to catch that person, because we think that person's riding away from me, and I feel like I'm pinned at my limit. He's just better than me. I'm going to let him go. But I think that's backwards. You need to think about attacks psychologically. And I think that's where, if you can put a person into that state, into thinking that, and that's sometimes all you need.
Which is usually what happens with Nate, but I think he got in touch with something that's really important this time, is that it's never over until you decide it's over or you cross the finish line. But the fact is, as soon as he saw that happen, he could have quit right then and there, and that would have been his race. But it's never over until you make that conscious decision. So just decide it's not over.
I'm sure there have been plenty of times in crit races, Chad. I mean, you've been a successful crit racer for years, but where you've thrown down attacks.
Oh man.
And you have not had the fitness or energy or felt like you could back that up, but it's worked, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, that, and I've also been on the other side of that where someone has attacked me, and initially I want to think, oh, I'm never catching that, but I don't let myself do that, especially when there's 40 or 50 minutes racing still ahead of you. But that's when it can really get in your head because it's so early in the race and you're already feeling like you've been beaten. That's a hard thing to rally from, but you just can't let it get you down. You have to accept that there's a lot still to be done.
So I like the idea of the takeaway being the purpose of attack is not just to get the physical space, but to put the other person in a mental state that they think they can't come back.
Exactly right.
Right. So
that's why when you attack, a lot of the time it's best to this is a component that can help with an attack. Don't look like you are just at the ragged edge falling apart and you're pulling away from them. If you can make that attack look like it's comfortable and convenient, I mean, look at Cancellara. That guy, whenever he would just roll off the front, that's what people, the Cancellara roll. Everyone talks about it that way, where he just rolls away smooth, right?
And you see it happen. I mean, we've had races where the strong guy rolls off the front and everyone just checks out. Well, now we're all racing for second.
Yep.
And that's the mentality from that
the
point
whole
forward.
field
It's such a drag.
Exactly.
in that state though, but could probably the whole field together have gotten back if they all thought they could
get him.
almost like 100%, right?
Three strong guys who organized and went after it and didn't accept that was the end of their race could bring that back.
Yep.
Yeah, and when you're that rider attacking and you make it look like it's just so easy and it's not a big deal, then I feel like that is even more psychologically damaging to your competition.
There's a lot of ways to exploit the psychology of that. I mean, just you attack once, you get reeled back in, you attack again, you get reeled back in, you attack again. I mean, just there are a lot of ways to show people that I'm a better rider than you, or I want it more today.
Yeah, I feel that a lot of people, and I think that our mind kind of operates in threes. And what I've noticed is after the third attack, a lot of the time, people are like, I'm done. I can't keep doing this.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And it's like it's 1, 2, 3. And at that third attack, if you can go on that third attack after that, chances are at that point they just think this is his MO. This is his operating pattern.
He's going to do this until we quit, so I'm quitting.
Exactly.
So this race that I was doing, he gapped me on the downhill and stuff. And then I thought in my brain, I just have to make it on the next lap to be in front of him before the start of the technical section. And
because that's where your disadvantage was, so you were looking to get out in front of that.
Exactly.
Smart.
If I had an advantage there, I could win the race.
Smart.
And I caught him maybe 3/4 through the power section. But again, I came up behind him and he couldn't really hear me. I waited a second, rested up, and then I went by at like 450 watts. Like I was going so hard, but like I'd been doing this the whole race.
Yeah.
And it was sorry, Tobias listens to the podcast, so sorry, Tobias. But there's like a little twisty spot, and I decided I'm going to go as hard as I can until he can't see me.
Nice.
And then I was trying to think that it would hurt him mentally. I don't know if it did or not.
Sight, yeah.
Psychologically.
Yeah, I like to get out of sight. It really helps.
Yeah, it does.
And I think I ended up beating him by 50 seconds. So in that lap, those lap and a half, I put on, a minute 20 on him, which is good. And I could have, based on what I've done before in past races, and this is what I want to share with everyone, it's so easy to check out and say that person's just gone. It's never going to happen.
But that making that move meaningful, I mean, that's a super valuable tactic. Otherwise, you're just the carrot dangling in front of them, showing you where you are. But as soon as you get out of sight, you could be just around the corner. You could be coming up behind them for all they know.
Exactly.
And two, it was 20 miles per hour probably at that section because it was kind of flat. It would have been a draft, right? Yeah. So I would have been giving him an easier ride if I didn't attack hard and try to get a gap.
A pro tip on that sort of a thing too, a lot of the time when you're going to pass somebody, like on mountain biking or even on road or gravel especially, if you have variable surface and everyone's kind of following a smooth line, when you can pass a guy in a rough line without having to drop right back into that smooth line again, sure, it's going to take more energy, but it's really tough for them if they're on the rivet to jump into that rough line and follow you, even if they get a draft. So when you're looking at how you're going to pass a guy in the line that you're going to take, another psychological play and physical play is to put them in a spot. Fine, you want to grab my wheel? You're not only going to have to work for it, but you're going to have to ride over the same uneven, hard, difficult terrain that I'm riding over right now. So it's kind of a... there are plenty of different things when you attack that you can do to put some salt on it too. So, but you mentioned something else though. So that first lap, it was different than the second lap in a technical section and a turn section.
The first 2 laps.
So maybe some of that gap too was also because you kind of nailed it at the end, right?
I channeled you. Okay. So, and this is a great course that has a bunch of like little S turns that goes downhill that are kind of flowy, but I was going into them too fast, and then I'd brake almost coming out of them. Like on the last one, I have to brake, and
and the reason you were braking was because you were going in so fast that your line was off, or you just didn't feel comfortable with going that
exactly.
Right? Okay.
And then I started to concentrate on exiting the turn fast, and instead of having to accelerate out of each turn, or I would still accelerate, I'd save so much time. So just the idea, and again, this is like drinking water, right? Everyone's like, good insights, Nate. Drink water and exit turns fast. But just concentrating on that, especially in the S turns, of kind of, it feels weird because you feel slower at the beginning of the turn, but then you carry more speed through it and you come out a lot faster. And I think you're overall a lot faster.
Yes.
And I think that also helped me on the technical sections where before I was losing time, and I don't really know if I lost time, but I think it helped.
Well, it's good that you play with that, because if you scrub just a little bit amount of speed and just show yourself, or just reestablish control, or put yourself in a place where you feel like you still have control, it can make the exit of that turn so much faster.
And each turn then, if I feel like I'm in control, I can go a little bit faster, right? Because the confidence builds.
Yeah. And you like crit racing too. We talked about this earlier in the week, but when you can go into that turn in a position where you aren't compromising control, but you can go into that turn and maybe you just get on the brakes a little later. Maybe you let go of those brakes a little easier. Anything else like that. It's not necessarily charging into the turn, because that's the worst thing you can do is charge in, then blow your momentum and have to build it back up.
That's what I was doing.
You know? Yeah. But if you roll into the turn at a more manageable rate, a lot of the time too, that kind of lowers your arousal level, the like mental state. You kind of, and you can see things a little differently. You might see a different line, or you might think, I can get a little closer to this guy and I can just drift to the side of him rather than, hitting the brakes, and you might be able to carry
Well, it's slower, and it reminds me of what Lee McCormick said. He must have said it 10 times over the course of our weekend, is that slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Yeah.
And in slow, we're talking relative. We're not talking going slow. We're slowing just a little bit slower, a lot smoother, inevitably faster, or eventually faster.
I went to lunch with two Cliff Bar riders the other day, and I told them about this Cat 5 crit, and I'm nervous, and they said, man, be off the back a little bit going in, because there's like a turny section. He goes, watch everybody. You just let go of your brakes and just coast through the whole thing, and you'll see everyone else, especially in Cat 5, hit hard and then accelerate hard.
Yeah.
And if you just ride smooth, because they're the whole point that like they're really, especially if you listen back to our Cliff Bar podcast, are really about saving energy. So in a crit, they're like, they don't want to slam into a turn and then accelerate out. They just want to be smooth the whole time. And they actually compare who had the lowest watts for the crit, which is such a cool way, right? Because we're usually the opposite, but
because that means you're smarter. That's what they're going.
As long as you don't get dropped.
Conservation.
Yeah, as long as you don't get dropped.
Yep.
But if you, for the first 3/4 of the race, who had the lowest watts? You were doing the best for conserving energy.
It's smart.
Yeah.
It's something that back in my motocross days, I used to call that digging for speed and turns, and it was basically looking at every square foot of every foot that I progressed on that course and thinking, how can I increase my speed over that foot, right? And it's what I would see a lot of people do in that situation was, well, I can stay on the gas longer into the turn, and then see what happens through the turn. And they kind of stop thinking after that. Like you said, I think it's best to concentrate on entering slow and then rolling through the turn, and then you build on top of that. The one thing once you have the technique down and once you have that smoothness down and you kind of know where your limits are, then I think that we have to think back to the start of your braking. So if you were braking for 50 feet coming into that turn, maybe you can brake a little harder and start with only 20 feet there. And so you're only braking for 20 feet. You get down to the speed that you need. You just carried more speed before then. So it's not that you're charging into the turn faster. It's that you're just spending less time dragging brake, right? And that's a kind of a next step is you just look at it like, can I wait to brake into this turn? I definitely don't want to push it to the point where I blow my line in the turn and I have to readjust and lose my momentum.
And that's one of the benefits of a circuit-style race, too. Whether it's a criterium or a 3-mile circuit or a 10-mile circuit, you get the benefit of repetition. You get another crack at it, and you get to do it at race pace, race speed.
And that brings me to my final point, thanks for the segue, is that this race course is at the right, like Lee McCormick said, the arousal level for me, where it's not so technical that I feel like I'm going to die. With some like single track 6 was above my skill level, right? Yeah. That's a real mountain biker's race.
Yeah, it was gnarly.
And this is laps, and we're doing the same course every time. So my confidence is going up. And what I would say to other people who are new to mountain bike racing, if you can don't throw yourself into something too deep. That's not, it's not, the swimming analogy of throwing yourself in the deep end.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the best way.
You might get some benefits, but it's definitely a good way to put yourself in a spot where you can't learn. It kind of blocks you from blocks the receptors.
You don't learn to descend fast by just going out there and hitting that top speed on the first day and just hoping for the best.
Yeah. Like skiing,
you gradually work it up. Yeah.
Here's the double black diamond. Go.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't happen.
No.
But I think though with mountain biking, it's more likely because friends take friends, and they go on things, and people get into skills where there's a double black diamond and you're brand new and you're like, no, that doesn't sound right. Right. But especially too, if you have a fear mindset that I think I have that I'm trying to overcome, it's even more so that you get into like a locked up state, like physically, and you don't want to do it. Even road riding, racing. My wife's got a little bit with outdoor riding with packs. Someone crashed in front of her.
Yeah.
I told her she needs to ride in some outdoors a little more. Ease back into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's key. It's really cool to watch too, to see you find races that are like in your and it's not that you're winning these races. That's not why they are, because you might, let's just say there's a technical race, but you manage to careen your way down this thing out of control, but still at a decent enough pace to win the race. It doesn't mean you're going to be getting the benefits.
Doesn't do a whole lot for your confidence just to survive it.
Exactly. So it's not just that you're winning these races. It's much more focused on the fact that the terrain is allowing you proper growth.
Yes,
which is really cool.
That is the key takeaway. The terrain is allowing proper growth, and it's not also boring for me.
Yeah,
it's very, very fun.
Yeah, it's at that proper rate.
Yep,
it challenges you, but it doesn't terrify you.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome stuff. So if you're looking for races, keep that conscious.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of retouching back onto the pre-race nutrition planning thing that you mentioned the day before with hydration, Tom has a question about that too. He says, "Hi guys, love the podcast. I have a few circuit races and crits coming up, lasting about 1.5 to 2 hours, which require me to get up and leave the house by 7 a.m. for a 10 a.m. start. And I wanted to know what the best nutrition strategy is to make sure I'm fueled for the race. We face this problem pretty regularly here in the sense that a lot of our road races are over the hill, so a bit of a commute. It says, currently I'm thinking of eating some slow-releasing energy foods such as eggs on toast at 6:30ish, or having a fruit smoothie with some oats, bananas, blueberries in it, before maybe having a gel after warming up before I race. Is this suitable, or is this a suitable strategy? Many thanks, Tom."
Yeah, so we all have something to contribute on this. Let me kick it off just by saying, just by stating the goals of sports nutrition. I mean, we basically have three aims: replenish glycogen, assuming there's any depletion, repair muscle damage, and synthesize new muscle. Okay. Cool. So in this case, all we're looking at is the glycogen side of that. So we can omit those other two concerns and just focus on glycogen stores.
Awesome.
I was going to say his three options again, which was eggs and toast at 6:30, so he'd have probably 3.5 hours. A fruit smoothie while he drives, so a fruit smoothie over 3 hours with oatmeal. And then separate than that, a gel right before warm-up.
Yep.
So you want to go on each one of those at once, Chad?
Yeah, let's cover actually, let's step back to the day before, because I think that this is something that
so
a lot of athletes perhaps, and we were actually talking about my terrible experience, my terrible example at Sea Otter 2 years ago. I think I did a race, and I thought, man, I feel like I'm getting dropped on the climbs. And so panicked about it, I think I can drop a couple pounds maybe.
Like this is like a race on Saturday and then a race on Sunday, and you're like, Saturday night, I'm going to drop a few pounds.
I'm going to drop a few, and it's going to help me climb way better.
I can't tell you how many things are wrong with that.
So I had a terrible decision. I had an seared ahi tuna salad, so like just super light on carbs, right?
Maybe none.
Yeah, like hardly any. I had some lettuce with some raw fish, and that. I raced the next day, and I was at the front of the pack solid because in my mind, I think psychologically I told myself, I'm a bit lighter. I'm good, And when I'm at the front of the pack for the first half of that race, and then it was genuinely an explosion. You probably could have heard it. Like, I just blew out the back of that race.
I heard it in Reno, actually.
Yeah.
What is that?
And as soon as I did that, I thought, I am completely out of energy. What am I thinking? You have to start your nutrition. If you're looking at race day, it starts before then, at least the day before.
Yeah, and that should be our concern. It sounds like that's what Tom's concern is that he's going to run out of gas over the course of the race. So he wants to make sure he's as loaded up as possible. And like we're talking about right now, that starts well before the race. We're not talking morning of. We're talking day before, maybe a couple days before, depending on the duration of the race and if you're going to delve into carb loading possibilities, et cetera. But it starts the day before. So A lot of people I know do priming workouts, and that should also be a factor. So don't skip the fact that even if you just did a 20-minute effort, there's some glycogen depletion that takes place there that needs to be compensated for later on. So just keep that in mind as well.
I've totally been experimenting with this, and I haven't found an upper limit where like the day before or even like the few days before, I've eaten so many carbs, as long as they're not like
you're not
Oreos
eating,
and Twinkies.
There's not really evidence of an upper limit. I mean, it's really what your stomach can tolerate. And then if you're comfortable with maybe adding a little bit of fat mass, you eat too much carbohydrate, it gets stored. Big deal. You carry an extra third of a pound into a race, but you're completely topped off.
Yeah.
I want to say that Kenyan runners are like, they're doing like 3 or 4 hours a day, but it was like 10 grams per kilogram was like the limit for them.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
They do a lot of work. They burn a lot of calories.
And I just want to reinforce, we've mentioned this a lot, but when we say carbs, I know carbs are associated as being evil, and a lot of people think carbs. They think of Froyo, Oreos, and
Coke.
they think of chips and
refined
Coke.
Sugar usually.
Donuts.
Yeah, that's and when you're taking on, we're talking about high quality carbohydrate from fruits, from vegetables, from
even those lower quality carbohydrates have their place.
Yeah,
we'll get to that when we get to the energy gel.
Yeah. So when you're talking about loading up, you're not just not getting a big old package of double stuff Oreos.
Sweet potatoes with black beans, oatmeal, a bunch of fruit, carrots, sugar snap peas, stuff like that.
High quality food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chad, let's say they eat the day before. Yeah. Let's go back to his question now. What do you think he should do the morning of?
I think as long as he addresses his nutrition properly the day before, he's pretty close to topped off as it is. Over the course of the evening, he'll sacrifice some liver glycogen, so get up and restock that. And he's got the advantage of being a few hours out from his race, so he can do that. What was he talking about, 6:30 in the morning for a 10 o'clock race?
Yep.
Yeah, so maybe even play it safe and start eating at 6, whatever. Even 6:30 is probably enough time to digest most of what we'd recommend, or I'd recommend you eat. And that's probably... I don't know that you're going to get a lot out of the eggs. I don't know that a influx of protein prior to a race is really going to do much for you.
Right.
Post-race, it's much more of a concern. Prior to the race, I don't know that there's a whole lot of benefit in that. So I would just keep that meal carbohydrate-centric. And because you're, a few hours prior to the race, they can be more complex forms of carbohydrate. It doesn't have to be the quick-burning, quick metabolizing stuff.
Yeah, because, if you think about it, that's the type of stuff that you need in that race, is that energy that you're going to be using when things are going pretty hard. So you need to be able to have that on board. And I look at the food beforehand, but like morning of, I love having like eggs and like a traditional American breakfast. I love that, but before a race,
it's not
I don't
really
eat
performance
that way.
Food.
Yeah, and then I look at that and I think, what is that really going to do for me on the bike? I should, if there's any time to make sure that, once again, assuming you're already topped off because you've eaten properly the day before and everything else, coming into that, you're not trying to load yourself up with anything. You should really be looking at like, I want race gas right now. Like I want good fuel.
Race gas.
Like,
topping
I don't
off
want
the stores.
Yeah, I'm not going to pull up to any pump and just put in whatever. I'm just going to put in the good stuff.
So Tom, I'll tell you what I would do. At that 6:30 a.m., I would leave out the eggs. I would do like a whole wheat toast with jam, and then I would have the fruit smoothie with the oats, bananas, and blueberries at the same time. And I wouldn't have anything, maybe in less water, leading up to the race
on the drive.
We talked about that. You can, and this is going to be different for everybody, but Chad and I both experienced that.
It's going to be a heck of a lot different.
Hypoglycemic state you can get in.
Yeah.
Over the course of that 2-hour drive to the race and being, an hour outside of the race itself, there's not a whole lot of benefit. You're not looking for a big bump in your blood glucose when all you're doing is sitting driving a car.
Yeah.
We also talked about something that perhaps people could misunderstand is hunger as needing to actually fuel yourself with more, because that could then hurt you in the race. And I think that a lot of people, especially endurance athletes, if they eat small regular meals and then you have a 2 to 3 hour drive to your race or anything else like that, you might feel like you're hungry, but it's important to remember the fact that, once again, you're not depleted on glycogen.
Yeah, just relax and let it digest.
Yep, exactly right.
And then I would do the gel or some chews right before the race.
Yeah, we're talking right before the race, like not even 30 minutes. If you can do it 30 minutes is fine, but if you could do it 10 minutes before. So sitting on the start line, waiting for the marshal to describe the course, whatever. So while you're sitting there ready to roll, that's when you do that last little dose of sugar.
Goo recommends 15. I usually do 10 or something. I think about it, it depends on how the race is going to start. If the race is going to start blown up, or the race is going to be a rollout for 20 minutes, then I might do it right before. I'll even put it in, I'll zip up my jersey and kind of put it right here so I don't forget it. Yeah. And then just eat it, and then as long as there's some trash, you're okay.
Yeah. if it starts, and also I guess keep in mind the type of race that you're doing. If you're doing short crits or anything else, or if you're doing something like a long road race, right? If you're doing something that's like a shorter crit, and you know that as soon as that thing drops, you're going to be pinned. It might be tougher for you to perhaps process that if you're just pushing all that blood in your body's just going to your muscles. So you might not, and if it's usually that's a shorter race usually. So you might
and
not
something
need
like a gel is going to break down quickly anyway. I mean, it doesn't require a lot of digestive resources to get 70 calories worth of almost already chewed food through your system.
Yeah. I guess thereafter it's all, and we won't delve into, I guess, fueling once the race is continued and you're going on. I feel like this is probably, if so much of nutrition, if you're trying to solve the nutrition problem once you get into the race without having any attention put in beforehand, you're late to the bus, so to speak. You really have to front load that one to make sure that you're planned. And it makes, I think, a lot of people, myself included, for plenty of years, I was blaming my mid-race nutrition on problems, but whether it was performance problems or it was gut problems or anything else. But really, if I would have just fueled better coming into it, then maybe I wouldn't have needed to do that.
And Tom says, I have a few circuit races crits coming up, which says he has room for experimentation. So make this the learning process that it ought to be. Try things that you think are going to work, find out whether they work or not.
Try with workouts.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
good opportunity.
Totally in a 90-minute workout, you're probably not going to run out of glycogen.
Right.
But I've noticed, man, the more I
start to fade though.
Yeah, you feel so much stronger. And when you finish, there's this psychological benefit too. When you finish a workout and at the end, you're not like super cooked.
There's a massive physiological benefit too, which we'll cover in a question coming up.
And then the next workout's easier and the next one's better. Eat some carbs.
Much better. Let's get into Matthias's question. He says, hi, Chad. This one's specifically for Chad, perhaps.
He emailed this to me.
Okay, gotcha. He says, in one of your last podcasts, Nate and you mentioned that over-unders and VO2 max intervals are the best way to increase FTP. His question, though, he says, are VO2 max intervals more effective than over-unders since you're spending a reasonable amount of time at VO2 max?
Yeah, I almost wonder, did we say improvements in FTP or just improvements in fitness?
I'm not sure.
It doesn't really matter. Sometimes it's helpful for, I do this, I recommend that people do this, is to take a step back from what exactly you're trying to address. Don't concern yourself so much with power at VO2 max or FTP or aerobic base. Simply see it as work capacity. Am I capable of doing more work? So in the case of something like over-unders, last week I did 10-minute, now can I do 12-minute over-unders? There's improvement. You improved your work capacity, your general work capacity. With VO2 max efforts, used to do them for 2 minutes, now I'm doing 2.5. Used to do them at 120, now I can do them at 122. There's an improvement in work capacity. It doesn't always have to be so finite, and it doesn't always have to be tied to FTP.
Small changes too, especially when you're talking about VO2 max and it gets closer to threshold than an above threshold. We're not talking like now I can do 50% more, so that's a benefit. We're talking small percentages.
So I'm not super concerned with just bumping up FTP here so much as improving fitness in some way. So with VO2 max, we're trying to, I look at anything done, sweet spot qualifies, anything done below threshold as elevating fitness at threshold, also FTP, from underneath, pushing it up. Whereas VO2 max kind of pulls it up from above. Okay. And that's really just tied to the intensity, and certain things go with that intensity.
Can you explain that more?
What's
the extremely pushing and pulling?
It's almost like a structural reinforcement when you go at it from below, and it's lower intensity. So you can do more of it, and you can more gradually reshape the system. Whereas if you do the high intensity work, it's obviously more intense, and it's quite a bit more destructive in terms of cortisol, just various things that happen when you work with high intensity, antioxidant release, which we'll talk about soon too. But it's just different forms that basically have the same end game in mind.
Okay, I'm going to say it a different way, and I might say it wrong, so correct me. Okay? VO2 max raises how much aerobic power you can do, and then threshold is how closely you can work for that aerobic power for a long time.
Yeah, that's true too. So, but I'm talking on the more extreme end of things, aerobic base work. So working for long periods of time at 60 to 70% has much of the same effect at working for short periods of time at 120%. Same end game. Maybe less so once we start to delve into stuff that's a little closer to threshold, like sweet spot and threshold work. In that case, we're trying to improve muscle endurance or stamina, or the time that we can spend at that same percentage without changing the percentage, just increase the duration.
Cool.
His next question, and he kind of ties this in, he mentions that he is doing a workout and a specialty plan that he did in a build plan. He says if you're riding the same two workouts in the build and specialty plans, their impact on fitness must be the same, especially given the fact that you started the latter plan with a newer, higher FTP. Or is it less about the individual workout itself and more the progression in training stress that leads to higher fitness levels? So the main question here is, same workout, I'm doing it in different phases of my progression through my training. Why is that? Why am I not doing different workouts?
Matthews, understand that the same workout can fulfill numerous criteria. It's not always aimed at one particular thing, and certain things carry over across different training phases. The build is focused largely on increasing your conditioning. Whereas we get into specialty phase, we're looking at refining what you can do, but also maintaining that conditioning that you developed prior. So some of those workouts that you saw earlier, we might see them again because they're aimed now at maintenance. You don't want to slide. You don't want to lose any of the stuff that you've already established. And so we'll touch on it here and there, and sometimes I'll recycle the same workout that helped you develop that fitness in the first place.
Yeah, not only maintenance, but maybe that workout is very apt for the type of racing that you're going to be
That's
doing,
another thing.
right?
There might be some aspects of it that really carry over to the specificity of your events.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important for people to recognize is that, as you get closer to your goal event, your work should start to reflect the be more specific to what you'll be doing on race day. So that workout that you may have done at a previous time, it's actually perfect for the type of racing you're doing, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't workouts that are base workouts and you never touch them again, and there aren't workouts that are build workouts and you never touch them again, and specialty ones that you never touch. We're talking about trying to trend that fitness in the proper direction, and we do it through many ways.
Yeah, we're addressing conditioning in one way or the other, either establishing it or holding on to it.
Gunther says, I'm new to TrainerRoad and want to thank you for a great training tool. I'm a lifelong cyclist and triathlete, on and off. I've been off for the past 7 years and I've put on a lot of weight. But thanks to TrainerRoad, I've taken off 42 pounds. Attaboy.
Way to go.
Way to go, man. That's awesome.
That's
You know how fast I'd be if I lost 42 pounds?
That's a 6-year-old.
Kept my threshold the same.
I was going to say, that's what got you in trouble the past couple of years.
Yeah, try it, Chad.
I did.
You did, yeah. He says, my question is related to warm-up prior to a triathlon. My goal for the year is to do a sprint triathlon. What is the best way to warm up? Should I swim, go for a ride, or a run? Thanks again, and have a great night. And I want to just touch on this really quick. We never talk about warm-ups really within the context of triathlon specifically. Yeah. It's usually within cycling.
That's a tough one.
Good opportunity.
Tougher.
So there's different levels, and I've seen what pros do, like Chris McCormick, and I've actually seen him do this in a sprint, is he does it backwards. He goes run first, then rides, then swims, and then races. I think most age groupers don't do that. One thing you can do, it is kind of important though, because if you go for the run, you get the porta potty, little extra stop, which is very important in triathlon. You should always go for at least a quick bike ride to check your equipment before a triathlon.
Yeah,
that's huge.
How many times do we see, even at Kona World Championships, how many riders were having like very basic mechanicals as they head out?
Someone couldn't shift through all your gears. We saw somebody she
stuck
couldn't
in the
shift.
Big green going up.
Palani.
Yeah. Anyways, do that quick check. But the most important thing for all age groupers, if you skip all of that, and maybe all of that too is not really warm up, is to do the swim warm up. Yeah. A swim warm up is so important. I think in triathlon, and you might be a bad swimmer too, and you're like, oh, I don't want to get too tired before the swim. But there's this cold water shock that can put you in a state of panic, and then there's like the kicking and mashing. I suggest that if you're new to it, to let the whole pack go and then swim by yourself.
That's a good,
But it's very important to get into the water, to get used to the water, get your head underneath the water. Maybe if it's really cold, open up your wetsuit a little bit, get all that water in there, get used to it, stay in the water for as long as you can, because you don't want that shock to your system. And then there's also the aerobic benefit because
and that's I think the most important aspect of it is that there's some form of general workout. Whether or not you're so specific as to go, do some running, do some riding, and then do some swimming, do something that elevates your aerobic uptake. I mean, just warms you up a bit. And the swim's the best fit for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
For the reasons that Nate just named. And I mean, that's where you're going to start. It's the most convenient, the least amount of anxiety.
And for when I used to do triathlon, the races were far away that it was hard to get there early. So to get in a run, a swim, or run a bike and a swim ahead of time
would be really tough.
Really tough.
Yeah.
So I'd ride around the parking lot, shift through all my gears, make sure everything's good, line up all your stuff, and then I would try to get to the water as soon as I could and just spend a lot of time in the water and maybe try to swim to the first buoy and back easy and then do race starts, because that's another thing. I do arm circles first, but then after you do a good aerobic warm-up, to do some hard 15-second sprints.
Yeah, and honestly, does it even matter if it's a sprint versus an Ironman distance race? Because you're going to go out hard. You need to be primed for that in any case.
Depends on how competitive you are, because there's a lot of people listening
true.
that will.
Sure.
The swim is just going to be survive. Like
That's how you sort things out, and like it starts once you get onto the bike almost for a lot of folks.
well, and to a lot of folks, that's one reason I love triathlon is because it's a competition against yourself. So there's so much of the time is not spent of like, I'm going to race this person, I'm attacking this person. Somebody passes you, both people say, good job, like, right? Because they're just trying to
very
get a
different.
better time than
That's a good
before,
point.
achieve something. So it's not always super fast at the beginning,
Sure.
but I still think you should do the warm-up and just get the aerobic system ready, and so you'll have a better swim and you'll feel more comfortable.
And as we've discussed plenty of times, if anything, if you remove the physical benefit of a warm-up, I think having a routine that, as long as that routine is something you can replicate regardless of where you're at, right?
Put yourself in the right mind space, headspace.
Exactly
Yes.
right. It gets you psychologically prepared, and in a swim, so much can go wrong to throw you out of that psychological state of focus. You get punched or you get kicked in the face, do anything else, and
Another big thing with the warm-up on the swim is wetsuits are hard to put on. And when you're new too, like if you put them on just a little bit wrong or crooked, or you don't have them pulled up enough, it can really put extra
Tension
on your shoulders, or you can get
Tough.
like a little kind of like a 2-year-old's diaper going on where you get extra water in there and it will catch.
yeah.
So just you can get those things out while you're racing or while you're warming up. And if you don't know about this, go on YouTube. Usually manufacturers will do it themselves, but there's also pros and plenty of videos showing how to put it on. It's very important to put the wetsuit on correctly. And a lot of people, I think I see them, they don't do it correctly. They don't have things lined up. Like the ones that I had, they have a seam where your pinky should go, and that's where the seam should go up your elbow and
All the
down.
way through.
And if you don't get that lined up, the rubber, like the way it flexes, it feels different, and it's
Yeah,
like
that'd
you
be
can
a
get
pain.
shoulder
It'd be
burn.
like fighting against
it'd be like
you.
Yeah.
pedaling your pedaling your bike with compression gear that was misaligned. It's like pulling your knee out of
Yeah.
the
Yep.
position it should be
That's
tracking.
exactly
in.
what it's like. So,
Yeah.
and then getting your goggles right and your swim cap right, and the swim is hard.
Because
You
eventually,
should just skip duathlons.
because eventually, I think that all three of us eventually are going to be focusing on triathlon.
I don't know about focusing. I do a couple.
I think we're going to do one in August.
Yeah,
So
that's
I hear.
true. Yeah, we can leave more information on that at some point. But I think even beyond that, we've talked about this, about actually focusing. I'm kind of like throwing us under the bus here, but we've talked about actually, focusing on half distance or even like a full distance race, which is craziness. But with that, I have tons of questions. Do you use something to help to make it easier to put on? Like I've seen like the Glide gel that you can use. Is that like a good idea? Is it a bad idea?
So some people do it to put on. Like, so Glide Gel, it's like this kind of wax kind of
Okay.
stuff that you put on your arms and your legs.
Yeah.
That's really made more to get your wetsuit off fast, but people can do to put it on. Other people will use like cooking oil or baby oil, but that can eat through the rubber, so you don't want to do that.
Yeah, don't use like olive oil like
Yeah.
Pam.
I've seen people do that
Could
though.
smell pretty bad.
The biggest thing with Body Glide is to put it around your neck, because so many people, I get it all the time, you get a chafing from the wetsuit. For some reason, wetsuit manufacturers can't get this right. Or I've had this happen too. You have someone else zip you up, and if they don't put the zipper down and then the Velcro, when you put the Velcro over, you can put it over kind of going up or going down. And if you go up, then you get this little scratch against your neck, and it will bleed and it will really hurt the next couple of days. But if you fold it down, there's none of that rubbing. So that's like
Interesting.
little tips. I would love for us to do triathlons, guys, because actually you're gonna be fast. You can swim, can't you? So maybe not. That'd be scary.
that de-escalated.
I know
quickly.
exactly. I was like, logic came into my brain. I'm like, wait, these suckers are pretty fast.
I've gotten my 10Ks down to sub 6 minute pace too. So
What?
be clear. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
You guys are
I'm
both
a
beating
force
me.
to be reckoned with.
This is what we're talking about. This is all day long.
All right, let's go into David's question. He says, what percentage of FTP should I target for TTs under 40 kilometers? I have TTs that are 7.5 miles, 8 miles, 10 miles, 13 miles, and 15 miles. I'd like some general guidelines for what is an appropriate percentage of FTP for these differences. So it's kind of interesting that this type of we get this question a lot. A lot. We get a number of questions around this. First of all, the one that we get really commonly is, I have a time trial, but it's not 40K. Should I do the 40K time trial plan that you guys have in TrainerRoad? And in most cases, that answer is yes, in most cases. Also, there are a lot of time trials like in the UK, and I wish we had them here. It'd be a ton of fun. But they're like short hill climb time trials. And when I say short, I mean they're like 3 minutes long, maybe, maybe 7 minutes long. Some of them are even like 2 minutes long. It's just like an all-out pinned effort up something. Those sort of things would be a ton of fun too. So in the question of how to train for or pace for a TT, hopefully we can cover all those questions that people have
we'll get to the super short ones later because I think those are a little outside of what we're talking about right here. David's talking about the shortest event being 7.5 miles. And really, I don't even look so much at the duration of the event as the distance of the event as the duration. Because, I mean, consider a flat course versus a hilly course. I mean, 3 miles on a flat road versus 3 miles up a hill,
And
substantially different.
Totally.
Yep. And then like a rolling course where you might have to push up one side, down the other side. Maybe there's a tailwind. Either way, all those factors, pull them out and just look at how long you have to be fast, how long you have to stay on it.
Exactly.
And in all these cases, I can't see anything, even a 7.5 mile on a flat road, it's going to take you at 30 miles an hour, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So they're at least 15-minute events, which makes them all about FTP, all about operating at percentages of FTP very close to FTP. Roughly 100%, right in there. Doesn't matter if it's 15 minutes or 50 minutes. The changes are subtle. It will matter certainly when you get down to what Jonathan just described, those 2 and 3 minute efforts. That's far more VO2 max effort. But even then, maybe you say, well, my effort's 8 minutes. What do I do in that case? There's no discrete switch between now I'm working at threshold, now I'm working at VO2 max. It's this one long continuum where it's all pretty close, and you're going to train a lot of the same stuff regardless of these durations.
Yeah, it's something that you bring up such a good point when you talk about a TT. The profile, the elevation profile that you'll be facing, to me has the largest effect on what you should be looking at in terms of how you're going to prepare for it. Because if it's just like if it's pan flat, sure, but if it's a situation where you are going to have undulations, that's tricky.
That's when the strategy starts to figure into it, though. The conditioning is still basically the same.
That's what I was going to say. That's duration. And then you're actually wearing the hat. If it's rolling, I would look at best bike split to figure out how to pace the uphill versus downhill.
And
then it'll be a little bit different, but usually when you put that in, and for those who don't know best bike split, you can put in the course, and it will say to get as fast or to be on this course as fast as possible. On the 4% grades, push at X watts, and then on the -2%, push at X Y watts. Yep. And it's usually pretty close though, closer than you would think. I think closer than a lot of people ride races too, where they just go, I'm going to kill the uphill,
surprising,
and do VO2 max 2 minute uphill, and then I'm going to coast it downhill.
It's way more consistent than you'd think, and that's actually something that I've seen with successful time trialists somewhere where they pull away from a person like me. And I'm hoping that I can change this, but when they go over the top of a climb and they start rolling and it's downhill, we're so good as cyclists at going easy on ourselves on that descent or feeling like we're working just as hard. When you start going down that downhill and you keep the pace consistent, that's really difficult. But that's where you can gain so much time.
This goes back to what we talked about earlier about attacks and stuff. And how often do you it's the hard section and you see the top of the hill and you think everyone's going to slow down and you're on your limit, and then one person goes extra hard. That's that person just put you in that mental state, and you probably could kick up even though you feel like you can't. But it's the opposite where you think there is relief coming and then it gets pulled away from you. That puts you in a deeper mental state of wanting to give up. Right?
And it's not, whenever you look at pacing, and I'd recommend using best bike split for your specific races, and then just remember the fact that you'll have to, that's an ideal plan, and then you'll have to adjust it for yourself. But the one thing that you don't jam it on the climbs as much as you think.
Well, it's for TTs.
Yeah, for TTs. You don't jam it as much as you think on the climbs, and you work way harder over the top and down on those rolling hills, on those descents. And that's the best way. I always tell myself the climb doesn't end until the descent's done. And that's the best way to be able to really, you can put the hurt on a competition. So
let me just for the sake of this question, put some hard as hard as they can be numbers on efforts, ranging from let's say 8 miles up to, where does it go? 15 miles is his range. So 8 miles at 30 miles per hour is going to take you about 16 minutes, right? 15 miles at 30 miles per hour. I mean, it's fast time, but just easy math on that. It's going to take you 30 minutes. So we're talking 16 to 30 minutes. The difference in percentage of FTP, maybe you ride at 105 or 106 for that 16-minute effort maybe you ride a little closer to 102, 103, 104 for that 30 minute. I mean, what I'm showing here is it's super granular. There's not big
really
changes in any of these, whether you're out there for 15 minutes or 45, not going to be a big difference, which says in the case of our training plans, the 40K TT plan and addressing your muscle endurance is the way to go in all cases.
Yeah. Even on something as short as an 8-mile time trial,
Yeah,
you're
8
still
miles is
looking
going to be
at
20 minutes for most people.
Yeah, so that's still, think about like a 20-minute effort. If you're
Think
doing
about your
that.
threshold test. See, if you do
Exactly.
a 2 by 8 and you went at 110%, there it is. Maybe you can do 110%, which brings me to, this is something you have to test out. I mean, if you know the specific duration and you're going to be out there, you're targeting 22 minutes, go out there and see how hard you can go for 22 minutes once. Get a sense of it.
The worst thing you could do, Chad, for that 30-minute time trial is you start at 110%, right?
Just blow up.
Because then you're not going to hit 104 for the whole thing.
Yeah,
Like
and that's just time trialing 101.
Yeah.
You don't start any higher than, try not to be too optimistic in those early minutes.
But I think, though, for you,
story.
for 40K TT, you can start 380 easy.
Yeah.
You're a big, strong
with
man.
300 FTP. Yep.
Yeah, you're a big, strong guy,
do
so you'll get that sub 50-minute TT.
Yeah,
You'll bank some time.
You say you want a legit victory, not a hollow one. So let's try to keep that in mind.
Okay, start at 280.
This next question that we have is from Alex, and it's one that we get somewhat regularly too. We've addressed this a number of times before in the podcast, but it's worth addressing again. He says, I like using erg mode on my Wahoo kicker. And just to explain erg mode, if you have a smart trainer, erg mode with TrainerRoad, what happens is that TrainerRoad controls the resistance of that trainer so that you're riding at whatever power target you should be riding at, regardless of gear or cadence. So that's what erg mode is. And he says, I like using my Wahoo kicker, using the kicker as the power source, since it seems to stay at the power target way smoother. We're going to come back to that in just a bit. He says, I have a power meter. Should I be using the power meter instead, as this is going to help more with outside training?
There's two things here.
Yeah, you choose which one you want to address.
Choose
first.
number one.
Okay.
I love the guys at Wahoo Fitness, but they are lying to you about how smooth that power is. It is too smooth. And they released a software update for about 4 days once where they took away the smoothing and they got a whole bunch of backlash because everyone goes, wait, you see my real power, and it goes up and down, and it's more like an instrument, like
jagged.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very jagged, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, people probably didn't say, I see my real power. They probably think it's all over the place.
They say it's
Something's
broken. Exactly. So seeing that smooth power output, I think there's a psychological benefit. And that's what people are getting out of this. And so don't think that it's locking you in any better. Because then if you pair it with TrainerRoad, if you pair a power meter at the same time and the Wahoo kicker, we're still telling the kicker to lock you in at 200 watts, but then the power meter is being recorded as the power source. So you'll see your actual power, and even as the kicker just rides there steady, you'll go up 5 watts, you go down 10 watts, you go up 5 watts, you go up 3 watts. And something that helps people who aren't used to this is you put on power smoothing in the app, and you can go up to like 30 seconds or something. I use 7 seconds. And that then makes it look more like the Wahoo kicker, but still not as smooth as the Wahoo kicker.
It only looks smoother. It's not actually smooth.
Exactly.
That's the good point. It's purely just an appearance thing. And one thing I just want to reiterate though for what you were saying, just to make it clear, you'd have the smart trainer paired and you're still controlling the resistance that way. But if you were to graph that power from your power meter, you would see that even though one looks smooth, the reality is very different.
Yep. And Wahoo's not the only trainer company that does this. Other ones do it to different levels. Another thing I want to say is that when we record the data, the power smoothing setting in TrainerRoad has no impact on it. We record at 1 second sample. So every 1 second we take your power. With the kicker, if it's smoothed, we're not getting the whole recording of it, but I don't think that's really going to matter in your training because it's really going to be close, and I don't think we'll even adjust your normalized power for that ride at all. The other thing that you can use is power match on this. So what we've seen too, sometimes a smart trainer, let's say at 200 watts, your power meter reads 200 watts too. So your kicker's at 200 watts and your power reads 200 watts. But then when you go up to 300 watts, your power meter reads 280, but your kicker reads 300.
So it's not a one-to-one relationship all the way up the power spectrum. It changes.
What we say there is the slope is different. And what Power Match does is we actually use a little bit, it's kind of cool, low-level machine learning to figure this out, but we try to find the best fit. So we are making it so that once and it improves as you ride through the workout, but once you get to those bigger changes, we're adjusting it so that the the kicker and the power meter are the same. So that if we want you at, let's say, 300 watts, your power meter will read 300 watts. And we're doing that throughout the workout, and we've tweaked it many, many, many times, and we're always trying to improve it. But I think it works pretty darn well right now.
Yeah, I got to admit, I had my gripes with Power Match in the past, but I don't have them anymore. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. When we did the machine learning thing, it helped a ton.
Yeah. And I think something for people to know, if you pair your smart trainer and you pair your power meter, Power Match is automatically going to be on too. So you don't have to like flip any switches or anything. It's already done for you, which is pretty cool. So,
and then the last point is, I think for recording your data, yes, use the same power meter inside and outdoor, because if there is that difference in between at 300 watts versus your power meter, that's where you want it when you actually sorry, I'm skipping around here. If there is a difference in the slope between your trainer and your power meter, you want it to be consistent in indoor and outdoor. So when you go outside, 300 watts feels the same as 300 watts inside. So yes, use your power meter. That's why you bought it. And then just put maybe lots of smoothing on. The only other thing is afterwards when we display the graph, that's a different amount of smoothing depending on how many pixels are on the screen. And so it might look a little more jagged than than you were while you're working out. But don't worry, it's fine.
Yeah.
You're doing great.
And don't once again, don't worry about your graph being variable. That's normal. Like that is the normal. So if that happens and if you're bouncing around a bit, don't worry about it.
A smooth graph is a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
right.
all.
Yeah.
It's just pretty.
Let's get into Ollie's question.
Real pretty though. and sorry, one more thing though.
Yeah.
I don't think you're losing as long as you with your Wahoo kicker, calibrate it, do the spin down, and I think you can use the Wahoo app. And there's their advanced spin down still, but anyways, you should do the things that Wahoo says to calibrate your trainer so that you don't have those slope differences. Right. We've noticed that not everybody does that every ride.
Yep.
And I don't think you're losing anything by having the smooth display while you're riding either. So I'm not
you're not
saying a kicker is bad.
So you want to calibrate the kicker every single ride?
I would do a spin down every single ride. Yep. After about 10 minutes of warm up, do a kicker spin down if you're not using Power Match.
Yeah.
So if you're just
okay, I got you.
If you're using Power Match, it doesn't matter,
right? Because
you don't need to do that.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, exactly. But if you're only using a smart trainer, any smart trainer that has calibration, not all of them have it. Do that every ride.
Yep.
Okay.
I agree with that.
After it's warmed up.
Okay.
Ollie says, I've read that multivitamin supplements lower the oxidative stress on your body and therefore reduce training adaptations. However, they also can boost the immune system. Do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages here?
Good question.
Berry
Ollie.
smoothies. Berry smoothies right here.
This sent me down a rat hole, and I'm not sure I have emerged from it. I don't have any straight answers for you, Ollie. So first off, let's talk about what free radicals are. So working muscles produce what are called reactive oxygen and nitrogen species. So free radicals, these little potentially harmful aspects of exercise that can cause cell damage. They can lend to muscle fatigue. There are downsides to them. It's argued there are also adaptive upsides to them. And the argument is that if we supplement with antioxidants, are we negating some of the adaptation we get from training?
They get a really cool name. They sound like a political rebellion group.
Sound pretty cool. Yeah. And the argument against exogenous antioxidants, so actually pill form, taking additional outside of what you'd get naturally through diet, is that, and this is a solid argument, is that inflammation steers repair. It tells your repair.
Your body
resources, your resources, where to go, where the issue is, what needs to be stronger, what I just taxed, what needs to rebound and be stronger next time, and we blunt that response. Oxidative damage or oxidative distress or stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's like anything else. We beat ourselves up, our body adapts, we come back stronger, we can deal with it better in the future. And endurance athletes actually have better antioxidative capabilities. We develop those through exercise, and typically it's through moderate exercise. The higher end exercise, the longer exercise is a little more detrimental, and that's where the arguments for antioxidants start to play into it. But over all the studies and all the confusing, it's different in the arms than it is in the legs. Here's what happened with rat muscle. Here's what vitamin C and vitamin E ingestion actually caused greater problems than they solved, et cetera. I just boiled it down to the takeaways or where the consensus lies.
Okay.
Thank you, Chad. We appreciate
please
that.
tell us.
Yeah, and it's get it through whole foods. I mean, Not
the
rocket
store?
science here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whole food items.
Okay.
That doesn't really clear it up. But the fact is, do it dietarily. Don't do it via supplements. There
Okay.
are cases for supplements, and it's when people are deficient. I was just talking with Pete about this, and Pete, our Cliff Bar guy, who also has a degree in nutrition.
Yep.
And most of what we should get, and Nate's a perfect example of this, should come from our diet. There aren't magic pills. I mean, we can supplement to try to clean up certain issues. Maybe if you have something very specific, supplementation might make more sense, but not so much in the case of not everything I read yesterday and this morning with antioxidants. If you can't get it through your diet, it's and when we talk about exogenous supplementation, we're probably talking about one or two, and even a multivitamin doesn't address it in the same ratios. Nature knows how to feed our bodies, or our bodies know how to reap the benefits of nature. We can't get that through these supplements, not as well anyway.
So what kind of foods to have the high antioxidants?
You'll be happy to hear. Cherry juice, sweet potatoes, two staples of your current diet.
I wonder why
berries,
that is.
And really simply, fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
Fruits and vegetables. And I know legumes and nuts and stuff like that are also on the list.
It seems like you know what you're doing with this.
Well,
thing,
I'm
Nate.
doing it on purpose, right? There's a couple like Acai, I never say it right. The
Acai.
Acai, yeah, those ones, and like goji berries. Those are hard to find, and those are like the ones. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff that has a lot
Those
of
are niche items with like huge markup. I mean, they're just buzzy, so they sell. They're money makers.
Other ones that are great though,
True story.
kidney beans. Like those are
not as sexy as acai.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Blackberries, blueberries, even strawberries. I didn't realize
Berries.
apples have a lot of antioxidants in them.
There you go.
Like all of these, it seems like, I need to get this like special pill with this certain thing.
Yeah.
Or I can just eat like the regular produce items that I can get pretty much anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Or at least, I don't really know any of the world, but
Yeah.
in the US you can get it pretty easily. Super easy. I think too the best argument is for this, to eat the foods like this, is who cares about a couple watts here or there? And that's comes a lot saying for me.
Yeah, it does.
Because I'm really anal about that
We've
stuff.
been talking about shaving a couple watts with a wax chain that's brand new,
$400
or one that's been used.
pulleys.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then like ceramic speed bearings that are like 1 watt for a bunch of money. But there's so much research saying that eating these types of food in a high antioxidant diet will help you help prevent cancer in the future.
Yeah.
That is so much better.
Bigger picture stuff, yeah.
So much better than having a couple more watts
Yeah, exactly
and
right.
worrying about it. And I don't think it makes you. I'd argue. So I don't have any science to back this up. One of my favorite sayings.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, but I'd argue like those high carbs and fruits and vegetables, you just feel awesome after you train and you can train more.
Yeah.
And maybe it does blunt something, but I'm training more and I'm getting faster. More so than when I didn't eat food like this.
Yeah. It's a good point.
That's anecdotal, I know. Just eat your fruit and vegetables.
Yeah, but there's always this concern. I mean, it's like people lose sight of the fact that you need to balance good health with performance.
Yeah.
And no, you just need to have good health. Then you can focus on performance.
Yeah,
It's
it
not-
kinda comes
it's
with
not
it,
a
too.
one or the other.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah, yeah. The type of fuel that makes you a good cyclist is the type of fuel that makes you a healthy person in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
I wonder
you
why
have
that
to be
is.
a healthy
I
person
know.
to be
Right?
a good
Yeah,
athlete.
exactly right.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about this topic?
Yeah, just there's no one size fits all. So some people respond differently to different antioxidants. Some people have a higher capacity to deal with these oxidized, reactive oxygen species, et cetera. So, what works for your body may not work as well for you,
Good point.
dietarily and performance.
That's something that we should always have, that personal grain of salt. Next one is from David on the nutrition kick again. We're actually going to close it out with 2 nutrition questions here. David says, quick question. Do you know if you have to ingest water with carbohydrates in order for your body to store glycogen? Since glycogen is roughly 3-to-1 water to carb ratio, it makes sense. But I'm wondering if you have any knowledge about this.
So let's answer that first.
Yeah, cool.
One of the steps in glycogenesis or glycogen synthesis is hydrolysis. I mean, the water has to come from somewhere. So they're using water to break bonds to further the whole, making glucose into glycogen. So it is a necessary step in the process. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to ingest it with your carbohydrate, but the water is going to come from somewhere.
Gotcha. Perfect. Okay. And he says, related, if your body doesn't have enough water to create glycogen, what happens? And this is, I bet, like, the fear here is dehydrated during a race, or am I drinking enough to actually process the type of nutrition?
Yeah, you're not making glycogen during a race. You're using glucose and you're using glycogen that's already there. Glycogen resynthesis is going to happen after the fact.
Cool.
But it just same thing that happens with glucose when you have a surplus or where you can't put it where it needs to go. So whether or not you have the water to make glycogen or your glycogen stores are already full, excess glucose has to go somewhere, and typically that goes to fat stores.
Gotcha.
So it's really that simple.
Cool. So it's actually not. It's
gonna
not
get
like
packed away.
Yeah, you don't have to like take in the gel and then take down a bunch of water to try to give yourself the water.
Not necessarily.
to
The bigger
break down.
concern there, I think, would be gastric distress, just trying to get it moving through the system rather than sitting in your gut.
Yeah, or like eating a dry thing when you're pushing really hard. Oh, that's the worst, man.
The worst.
Yeah, start spitting crumbs. Last one's from Taylor. He says, "Hey guys, love the podcast. Been listening for over a year now. My question is this: what are the benefits of supplementing with creatine for endurance athletes? I've read some recent articles lately that there are some benefits when it comes to VO2 max from creatine supplementation. Any feedback on expertise on this would be greatly appreciated."
Okay, so from the start, we're endurance athletes. We rely primarily on our aerobic system. The anaerobic system is broken down into two different systems. One's glycolysis, the glycogen we were just talking about, and the other is phosphogens, which is the ATP that's already in the muscle, actually in the muscle fiber, and phosphocreatine or creatine phosphate, so
That's
CP.
some really fast burning stuff, right?
Super fast burning and in very limited supply. So that's the true fight or flight stuff. That's you can use it and it's gone anywhere from, depending on the intensity, 8 seconds, maybe as long as 30 seconds. You can train it, you can stretch it, you can train how quickly it replenishes, things like that. But the fact is, it's just not very useful to endurance athletes.
That's your 9 lives fuel.
Yeah, short of.
It's like what you use to escape death, right?
Yeah. So the fact is, if it does have benefits, if it can give you just a little more snap for that 8 or 10 second effort, how useful is that over the course of really any type of race?
Yeah,
short
really.
of maybe like a kilo sprint where you need to get up to speed promptly.
Yeah. And something along that really quick. Sorry for jumping in, but I know a lot of you are thinking, well, my sprint doesn't last that long, but keep in mind what you have to do before that sprint. And for most of us, it's a lengthy aerobic effort that we have to do where it's dancing in between aerobic and anaerobic stuff. And
this isn't going to be the race maker for really anybody. Again, it's just hard for me to imagine a situation where having an extra little boatload of creatine is going to be the difference between winning and losing a race.
I think so that it's shown that creatine for like the really short stuff might improve a little bit, but the downside for cyclists is, and I've taken creatine many times since high school or something. You put on water weight. You hold maybe an extra 5 pounds, and that's kind of Jonathan's point. If you do a road race, you got to hold 5 extra pounds.
And for what?
Well, so maybe you're a little bit stronger on the sprint, but then when you get to the sprint, you're actually weaker because you had to carry 5 extra pounds for that entire race.
Exactly.
Right. So
and it's 5 extra pounds, like you said, Chad. That's not doing anything for you, right? Yeah, relatively speaking.
So what I would say is maybe track people. If you're track, like those guys with the they're pretty much bodybuilders on bikes.
Yeah.
Like a points race, or there might be track's really the closest thing I can get to making a case for creatine supplementation.
Yeah.
And even then, it's tenuous.
Maybe I'm just throwing this out there. Off season while you're training and you don't really care about your
strength
weight.
training. But again,
because
make you a faster rider.
There's tons of research that creatine supplementation does help with strength training.
Explosive strength, max strength. Yep, plenty of it.
Interesting stuff.
And it's super cheap too. It's like one of the most researched supplements for weight training out there.
It's just dirt cheap. Yeah. Yep. All right, everybody. Thanks for submitting your questions to us. You can do so, remember, at TrainerRoad.com/podcast, and we will look through those questions next week, put them together, and we'll be talking to you then. I guess that covers it for this week, guys. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right, and for everybody here on the live stream with us, stay tuned. Our producer, Bryce, is going to try to get Instagram going on, so hopefully we don't bump the camera around too much or anything, but so bear with us while we do that, because we're going to get some live questions going on there.
Chris Murray says, your TrainerRoad T-shirts, Nate and Jonathan, are sporting. Possible to buy? No. Well, thank you for the compliment. You can't buy them, but we'll bring T-shirts to all these events that we come and do. And if you just come talk to us, we'll give you one for free.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always, whenever we do trips like that, I try to pack a few bags.
Yeah,
we're going to pack a few shirts in my bag.
Conan will do a better job when we go to the Sagans race.
Yeah.
We'll do it, and we'll try to do a better job on that.
Absolutely. I think Bryce just got the phone in there. Maybe. Who knows? All right, let's start answering some questions here. Looking at
Hey, Bryce, could you mute the sound?
on your speakers,
Yeah.
on your headphones. There we go. Yeah, there you go. Cool. Okay, when starting a new training program, how can an actual ride be included into the training program? For reference, I'm a mountain bike rider who will ride long, slower rides on Fridays since I have the time to do it. So that's the question that we get on it, or pretty frequently, like how do I work in longer weekend rides into my training plan? We get that question a lot. Chad, do you have any basic
if you're trying to stay on track with the structure of the workout, it can be a little more problematic. You can make it happen. We've talked about various ways to incorporate intervals into group rides, but group rides being what they are, it's super hard to do. If you're just talking about an outdoor ride, a little bit easier to do, assuming the terrain accommodates it. In most cases, we recommend making the more complex workouts indoor rides and the less complex, more steady state workouts outdoor rides.
I can't say his Althoff. He asks, hey, fantastic podcast as usual. I'm an avid user of TrainerRoad, but also enjoying getting out just as much. Whilst following a plan, are there any plans to automatically update indoor workouts when one has ridden outdoors so the TSS is balanced accordingly? Yes, thanks for the great question. Go to the TrainerRoad beta group on Facebook, and you can get early access to a feature that does just that. And it is super cool. We're very excited.
Yeah.
We're trying to we're just so update for everyone on that. It's a new product. We're calling it Performance Analytics. You can read all about it in that beta group. And we're adding people to the beta. We're fixing bugs. We actually have a pretty short list. The team's done a great job of doing a good job in the code. And then as soon as we've gotten it to a state where there aren't the bugs and we've backfilled your workouts, it's going to be live for everybody.
Absolutely.
So I don't have a timeline exactly, and timelines are always hard to do, but it's the top priority of the company, and every day we post the top priority for the company every day with the tasks, and it's up there. It's the number one.
Cool.
We want to get it out.
Let's do Caleb's, because I actually wanted to address this last week and I missed my window. What's the best way to proceed when hitting a plateau? I'm using your low volume plans, completed base and build, but still feel some fatigue in my legs. Additional recovery time before specialty? ? Plateau is almost always one of two matters. One is that it's not enough stress to exact an adaptation. So you're not working hard enough. More commonly, it's you're not resting well enough. So if you've plateaued, it's typically because you're trying to do too much work for your body to accommodate. You're not giving it the downtime necessary for the adaptation to take place. You're just kind of hovering in that same spot and being persistently, continuously fatigued and often enough sore.
Here we are. If you're joining us on Instagram Live, by the way, go ahead and type in your questions that you might have, and then we can address those as well. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So,
Chris Murray asked a question about plans for older athletes, and I'm going to answer the business side of it, and if you could answer the adjusting plan. So, a while ago, Coach Chad said he was going to develop plans for older athletes. Believe it or not, I'm even older than Chad. Wow, Chris. Eat your antioxidants. I know that.
oh gosh.
Sorry, Chris. That was a dig at Chris when it should have been a dig at Chad. I know the alternative at such time is to put an extra recovery week, but any news on those? So the business side of that, Chris, is we looked at, we went in pretty far down this hole, and it was going to balloon our plans up to 3 or 4 times as many. Instead of that, we have another feature that we want to do that will address your concern, but that's being built right now. So after performance analytics, the thing that we've already started working on, another group of engineers, is the best calendar we can build. And then the next feature is going to address that. But that is super secret. So all I'm going to call it is that. So Chad, for everyone else who's listening, if they're an older athlete, besides just adding an extra week of recovery, what other things could they do if they're a poor recoverer or a master's to adjust training plans?
Well, that's it. It's not even adding an extra week of recovery. It's shifting your recovery week around. So most commonly, a couple weeks of loading is enough to put you in not a dark place, but a place where you recognize you're not getting as much out of subsequent workouts. You're just starting to not plateau exactly, but you've reached a point of overreaching where it doesn't make sense for you to press on. So that's where you insert that recovery week. It's not always a tidy fit, and that complexifies things a bit. But most masters athletes have a more flexible schedule than, say, younger athletes. in which case maybe it's a little easier for you to move things around. But with this in mind, when you schedule your training relative to your most important event, when wherever your planned peak is, you got to go back and do a bit of math. See that if I'm recovering every third week instead of every fourth week, how does that adjust my plan? How many extra weeks do I have to pad my plan in order to make that work? And that's just recovery weeks. As far as recovery itself, I have been having a better go at things when I do my first workout and I recover, and not necessarily full recovery, but recover for 2 days before I do my next hard workout. So I used to be able to get away with a Tuesday and a Thursday workout with just Wednesday as rest, and I was firing on all cylinders for that Thursday workout. Now I've shifted it to Friday, and things are trending in a more promising direction.
A couple questions from Instagram really quick. Why do you all have travel mugs? We've talked about that before, but
we're going places. That's why.
These ones, I don't really see them as travel mugs as much as
Insulated.
something that keeps my drink exactly the temperature that I want. So
Yep.
all of us have them. We have to keep our mouths. It's pretty dry in here. So and we're talking for so long.
It's caffeine.
Yeah,
That's
for those two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An addiction.
Yeah. And then another one is SMO2 a needed tool. I'm not going to go into the specifics of that, but something that I commonly answer whenever somebody brings up like, hey, check this out. This tool can measure X, Y, and Z and measure all of these different things. I think that data is useful as long as it can be easily applied to improve performance. And that's what's really good about a power meter is the fact that we have a really good structure around it. So like a data point, if it doesn't have a good structure that can be applied to training realistically, then it can be confusing or misleading, or at the very least just distracting perhaps. Mm-hmm. It could just be informative too, but how often do you just leave the data being informative? And sometimes it can pull something into question. So I think that there are plenty of ways that we could measure like performance and get indicators of perhaps leading things that could happen later on down the road with your performance. But if we don't have a framework around that can be easily applied when I'm on the bike and I see an instant indicator of what it is and everything else, then it's tough to use. A
couple times in the past, people have approached us at TrainerRoad and said, I have this new product. It measures X, Y, and Z. Why don't you guys support it and we'll figure out if it makes people faster?
Yeah.
Like
so we can do the research for them.
Exactly, and have our hope. I don't like that. I want to have something be proven, and then we'll apply it, rather than have all the TrainerRoad users be guinea pigs and we'll kind of figure it out.
And there's still a concern with keeping things simple. I mean, we add all these variables to the mix, and then we start to get basically data shock. I mean, we can't make usable decisions because there's just so much information circulating.
Yeah.
Chris Murray, this one's for you. I'm going to paraphrase his question. It's got two good ones in a row.
Okay.
He's not a racer. He does recreational group rides. So probably a lot of TrainerRoad users aren't racers, but he still wants to be good in these group rides. Mm-hmm. How would he train any differently to be good in a group ride, he calls it a competitive recreational sport cyclist, compared to someone who's racing?
No. Short of actually getting out into those group rides and learning, the dynamics of being in a group, the conditioning's all the same.
Yeah. How often have you guys trained really well during the off season, then you join that first group ride and you're training for a race, but in the group ride,
you get dropped?
No, you don't get dropped.
Well, so
I'm saying the opposite is like you do really well because it's the same kind of fitness.
I'm going to counter that to a certain extent. I think that you have the fitness that other people don't have, perhaps, or maybe you have fitness that you didn't have. But it takes a little bit, I've found, at least for me, it takes a little bit for me to remember how to effectively utilize that fitness in a race scenario. We kind of talked about it earlier as far as getting fluid in that race scenario. I've seen both sides of
that.
Yeah. So what I usually feel like is, stupid me. I have all the fitness to be able to do well, but I got in the way a lot of the time. So I don't want people going in and thinking like, oh, I'm going to smash it every time. There's more to it. But the fitness part you've got.
The Cliff Bar guys, actually, we had this great talk at lunch. Another thing I love about TrainerRoad culture is we eat lunch. We talked about bike racing for 60 minutes straight.
Yeah.
And they said that it can actually be detrimental when you come into a race and you're stronger than everyone else and you think you can just do whatever you want.
You're the hammer and you're just going to...
I think of it like fighting children, right? You're like, I don't need to protect myself. I'm just going to fight all these children. Yeah. But as soon as somebody's a little bit bigger in there, if you don't protect yourself, like how Jonathan said, I'm going to be really strong and I don't race smart or use my fitness correctly. And even in that group ride, you might get dropped because you pulled on on a slight downhill and they kicked it up on an uphill.
Yeah.
And
now
you're like, that was not smart. Yeah, I'm a little bit cooked. You get gapped and you're gone.
Yeah. Back to your analogy of children. Some of them have pointy little elbows, and all it takes is just one false move, right?
Well,
exactly.
And that's the point of those group rides, is to learn those strategies, practice those strategies, see how things work, and see how costly mistakes can be.
Yeah. Another question from Instagram: is it common to stand out of the saddle to squeeze out more power during an FTP test? I see people do this, and I don't recommend it. I don't know, Chad, do you?
No, we're not trying to eke more. We're not trying to cheat the system and jack up the most artificially inflated number possible, and that's really all that happens when you get out of the saddle and lend this big anaerobic contribution by basically sprinting to the line. We're trying to see what your maximal lactate steady state, your maximal sustainable power is, where all your most of your physiological systems are kind of even keel, and you can stay there. Like I said, that's really all it does is cheat the system. It just artificially inflates a number that was reliable up to that point.
Yeah.
David Yang says, are there any plans to add the ability to add weekly comments on the Performance Analytics career page? So I think it would help keep track of why we had layoffs or inconsistencies. It can be hard to remember why I took a day off or week off sometimes when looking back. David, that's great insight. So again, David's talking about our unreleased product, Performance Analytics. And there's a great
Y'all are getting leaks.
training stress chart there to figure out. And I'll see a hole and I'll say, was that hole? Was I sick? Was I tired? Or was I traveling? Right? Like, I'm not sure. And so I agree 100% with the comment. And we kind of did some designs of doing it right now, but we think it works better when we have calendar. And then you would actually assign it to a date as you're working out and have different types of I'm probably giving competitors too much of an advantage right now, but yes, it's coming, David, and we're working on that now. Yep. So good insight, and yes.
Another question from Instagram says, hi guys, longtime user listener, currently in the process of upgrading my trainer, and the hammer is on sale locally. Recently, Nate mentioned he is using it. How does he like it? Chad, you're using it too, right?
Yeah, I love it.
Love it.
It's my favorite trainer so far.
Solid one. And then, is it advised to complete the base phase every year before starting to build for a different discipline? And that's another question that we get. Can you skip base training is like the common one, basically, where people are asking, I'm already conditioned from, or I raced last year. I took some time off. Do I really need to do base training again? I recommend it. It's not bad.
It largely depends where you are in your season. If you need quicker fitness and you're only a few weeks out from another round of events, you don't necessarily need to revisit base. You probably don't. If you're carrying a lot of fitness into what would be a repeat of base season, maybe you don't in that case either. But if you're starting from scratch, if you're new to structured training, if you've never really done base training, in most cases, base training will pay off.
And if you have the time to do it, it's not going to hurt.
If you have the time to do it, there's no reason not to. I wouldn't steer anyone away from it.
This question is for you, Chad, from Josh Young. I did my first TT this weekend as part of a stage race using my road bike with clip-on aero bars. Over the 8.5-mile flat TT, I averaged 305 watts for 21 minutes, which is 70 watts lower than my best 20-minute power, which was obviously not in the aero position. Is being in the aero bars even worth it at a 70-watt spread? I'll obviously keep practicing with my seat 4 aft as I'm already maxed out as far forward as possible. I haven't practiced this position much, 3 to 4 times total. What should I do? How much can I improve my watt spread through practicing the position?
True. That's way too big you can't forgive that. That's way too big a sacrifice.
Unforgiven, Josh.
Yeah.
That's big.
Unforgivable.
Yeah.
That's big.
I mean, again, it's comfort, power, aerodynamics in that order every time. You have to be comfortable. Doesn't sound like you're comfortable if you're hemorrhaging that much power. And secondly, you're not powerful, not relative to what you can do. So obviously the bike fit has to change.
Yep. I would say
totally.
There's the bike fit, but also, Josh, you haven't trained in this position.
That's something, but I was just talking to Nate about this morning. I know my bike fit is proper on my TT bike. I got on it, and I'm not doing long efforts in aero, not long intense ones. I can do long, low-intensity ones in position, but that just furthers my point. Immediately, there's a level of comfort that's something I can work with.
Josh, one thing with the bike fit, I know you said you've already maxed out your fore and aft. What you can do is get a different seat post for your bike, as long as it's not an aero bike. You can do a bike that has a seat post that has a big setback, and you just turn it around, and then you have a big forward position.
Whether or not that puts you too forward, though.
No, because then you can have the rails then. So in the TT bike with road bikes in this position, it's highly unlikely you're going to be too far forward, and you can always just put it back, right?
Yeah, you usually run into a mechanical constraint.
Exactly.
Before then.
And then
I just one word of caution with that, because I've done this in the past. I've put myself too far forward, which puts my knees too far over the pedals, and knee pain kicks in a couple rides in. So don't be too extreme with it.
That's a good point. And then also to practice in it, when I remember first doing exactly what you did, the same, not 70-watt drop, but you get a big drop. But as it's kind of a combination of all of it. A better position will be probably the biggest initial increase. And then even with a perfect position, I still think training in the position will get it higher and closer to your road bike, because you just haven't been in that position putting power out. Like,
it can be quite a shock to the system.
Yeah.
Another question from Instagram says, looking at my rides once they sync with Strava, they tend to have a really high mileage per ride. Can you talk a bit about how you calculate that based on the power given out? The first thing I would say is, and I know like people keep track of like their annual mileage.
People are going to hate.
And they won't like that. But man, I don't track my annual mileage because, and it might be a neat thing, and it's definitely cool to like tell people that aren't cyclists. You can be like, I just rode 150 miles, and their mind just gets blown, right?
Blown away.
Like when I tell you guys, I Everested once, I rode over 200 miles. Yeah.
How long was it?
222 miles. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Gross.
See, you're very impressed. So I get that, right? But at the same time, mileage is just such a vague indication of what you've done. And also, when you're using a smart trainer, it can be a bit problematic, right? Because you can be in like the biggest chainring up front, tiniest cog, and we're holding you to the wattage that you need to.
I used to have people in my comp trainer classes would dump it into the biggest gear just so they could have the fastest miles per hour, even though we're all sitting side by side going nowhere.
Yeah, so think about that. Remember, it's adjusting the resistance. So if you're in that huge gear, it's going to be like, this is a lot of revolutions per minute. It doesn't care about that as much as just keeping it to your power target. So versus, let's say you're training in your tiny ring up front and then a big cog in the back, and you're not going to have much distance with your smart trainer. So distance, especially indoors, is irrelevant.
Yeah. So we're, just to expand on that, we're taking the speed from the smart trainer, and that's how you can get a big average speed for that. We've thought about doing like a
conversion. Yeah,
like we call it virtual speed. But just, again, the only benefit would be to have like some type of miles.
Like a bragging point.
Yeah, but we don't want to like push people to look at miles as they're training, right?
Yes.
We would rather have them look at training stress.
Yes, and power and hitting your marks and making sure that you're doing that.
And personal records and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And follow your training plan and doing the right kind of training, not just miles.
Our focus is not just to find a good way to make you train. Like, we're constantly trying to find the best way to make you train. So that's why we stay focused.
I'm not saying that it might not ever happen and we might do it, but as soon as we do it too, my fear is that everyone who is getting the 23 mile per hour workouts and they suddenly change to 15 mile per hour workouts,
they'll get really upset.
Exactly.
I'm sure.
And then we'll have to deal with that. So we might do it someday, but don't plan on it right now. It's not on the priority list.
Yeah. Another one, I'm having trouble getting rid of pedal knock at low power, high cadence, and it seems to get worse when I follow instructions with kickovers or pullbacks. What am I missing? Perhaps any drills? Pedal knock, I assume that what you're talking about is like...
Dead spot.
Yeah, where it's like you don't have tension on the chain anymore, then it kind of it comes back around, so to speak.
Yeah, so slow down. That's it. You're going too fast. You're trying to spin more quickly than you can control. Mm-hmm. So if you back off just enough so that you eliminate those knocks, work there for a while, gradually try to increase that without reintroducing those knocks.
Mm-hmm. Jan says, quick question. I train on a Creatine Road Smart. That's a smart trainer, obviously. I normally get on the bike, calibrate, then begin my warm-up and work out. Should I recalibrate after the warm-up? Yes. I believe Creatine recommends on that trainer that you do it after a 10-minute warm-up, and especially because there is the friction between the rear wheel and the drum, and that is where, as you heat up, the rolling resistance changes. So that's why you have to do a spin down after 10 minutes. But it gets to the state where after it's warm up, it doesn't get any hotter. It kind of stays the same.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
Here's one, Planet Gas. For me, in early podcasts, you, Chad, were a big fan of fasted training. In later podcasts, you believe your performance was much better if you trained later in the afternoon. Where do you stand on this today? I haven't changed at all. In both cases, I believe fasted training has its place and can be very beneficial. And we're not talking about starvation here. We're talking about chasing particular aerobic adaptations. And as far as performance in the morning and the afternoons, I've just dove back into morning workouts, and I am struggling. So
They're hard.
Yeah.
They're always hard.
Eric asks, hi, isn't TrainerRoad built for pro riders? And do amateurs like me with physical dilemmas? And then he stopped. But I'm guessing he meant, his point is, it sounds like this is just for pros. Mm-hmm. And this is a key takeaway that the pros, I'll let you answer this, Chad.
It's for anybody who wants to get faster.
Yeah.
It's really that simple. So it doesn't matter if you're already fast and you want to get a little faster, if you're brand new to this and you just want to get fitter, faster. It's for anybody and everybody. And the fact is we can tailor it based on your personal fitness. So it's how you stack up to everybody else is really of no consequence.
How I view it as the pros, they don't do different workouts. They just do more volume.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They might still do the same intensity, but then they're just adding all this extra volume, this extra volume. And they might be doing 20 hours a week where you might be doing 3 hours a week. And that's the real difference is the amount of volume.
Yep, absolutely.
And the training stress. So you could actually get fitter with a weekly training stress of 50 or 30 even. That could be something that makes you fitter. It's not going to be the same for a pro level world tour rider who has to have 130 or 150.
Exactly.
Yep.
Chad and I were just talking about this too. In a lot of cases, what we find separates a pro athlete from a working athlete that isn't obviously just doing pro cycling. A lot of the time, it's just their ability, that pro athlete's ability to really recover well. Whereas just because you're sitting at your desk does not mean you're recovering. You're dealing with a lot of stress.
Their lifestyle lends to better recovery. Their physiology lends to better recovery. So they're genetically more inclined to recovery, and they have the luxuries that allow them to do it as best they can.
We have any more questions? I guess we're just bumping up against time.
Yeah, let's end it.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in on the live stream, and thanks for everybody also for tuning in on Instagram. I think that we're just going to do Instagram Live on the last part now that we do, where we do the questions. So look forward to that next week. Thanks everybody.
Thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.